Remember opening your lunchbox and actually being excited about what was inside? Not because of cartoon characters or toys, but because it was real food made for you that morning. Before processed food took over, lunches were made by hand, packed with care, filled with ingredients you could pronounce. Simple meals that reminded you someone at home was thinking about you. Today, we're exploring 10 classic kids' lunch items that have nearly disappeared. Walk through a school cafeteria today, and you'll see kids eating pre-made sandwiches sealed in plastic, assembled in factories days or weeks ago. 30 years ago, sandwiches were made fresh that morning. Real bread from the bakery or homemade loaves, sliced thick. Sometimes still slightly warm, the kind of bread that had texture, crust, and actual flavor. Inside, real sliced turkey or ham from the deli counter, not processed lunch meat pumped full of water and preservatives. Real cheese that came in blocks, not individually wrapped slices that never melted properly. Maybe some lettuce, a slice of tomato, a thin spread of mayonnaise or mustard. Simple. But when you bit into it at lunchtime, it tasted like food. Not like the inside of a plastic wrapper. The bread didn't stay perfectly soft for 2 weeks. The lettuce sometimes wilted a bit by noon. The tomato occasionally made the bread slightly soggy. But those flaws meant it was real. Made by human hands, intended to be eaten that day. The wide-mouth thermos was a lunchbox staple. And it wasn't filled with instant ramen or canned soup heated in the microwave. It was homemade soup from last night's dinner, or made fresh that morning. Chicken noodle with real pieces of chicken and vegetables you could identify. Tomato soup with actual tomatoes, not just red-colored liquid. Vegetable beef with chunks of tender meat and potatoes. The thermos kept it hot until lunchtime. You'd unscrew the top, and steam would rise up carrying the smell of home into the noisy cafeteria. That warmth in the middle of a school day meant something. It was comfort, connection, a reminder that someone cared enough to wake up early and heat soup for you. Today's kids get instant cup noodles or microwavable pouches. Same category, completely different experience. The difference? One was made with love. The other was manufactured for profit. Open a modern kid's lunch, and you'll find fruit snacks. Gummy candies shaped like fruit, colored like fruit, marketed as containing real fruit juice. But they're not fruit. They're sugar, corn syrup, and artificial flavors molded into shapes. Old school lunches? Actual fruit? An apple? An orange? A banana? Grapes in a small container. Sometimes a peach or a pear. Was it as convenient as a pouch that never spoils? No. The apple sometimes got bruised. The banana occasionally got too ripe. The orange required effort to peel. But when you ate it, your body knew it was real food. Natural sugars. Fiber. Vitamins that came from the ground, not from a laboratory. And there was something satisfying about peeling an orange with your hands. The citrus smell filling your immediate space. Juice running down your fingers. That sensory experience taught kids what real food looked and felt like. Today's fruit snacks teach them that food comes from factories, not trees. The dessert in old-school lunches wasn't a mass-produced snack cake with a shelf life longer than your textbooks. It was a homemade cookie or brownie, baked the night before, wrapped carefully in wax paper or tucked into a small container. Chocolate chip cookies where you could see the actual chocolate chunks. Oatmeal raisin that was chewy and substantial. Brownies that were fudgy in the middle and slightly crispy at the edges. They didn't have preservatives keeping them soft for months. They were meant to be eaten within a day or two. And they tasted like someone's kitchen, not like a factory production line. Sometimes they crumbled a bit in transport. Sometimes they weren't perfectly shaped. But when you bit into one, you tasted butter, sugar, and chocolate the way they were supposed to taste. Today's packaged snack cakes are engineered for consistency and longevity, but they sacrifice flavor and soul to get there. The modern version is bright orange cheese spread or individually wrapped squares paired with crackers that taste like cardboard. The old school version was a small container with cubes of real cheddar, slices of Swiss, or chunks of Colby packed alongside actual crackers. You could see that it was cheese. It had texture. It required a bit of chewing. It tasted like milk and salt and thyme, because that's what real cheese is made from. The crackers were simple, saltines, or wheat crackers, or Ritz. Nothing fancy. But they were made from flour and fat, not from a list of chemicals designed to extend shelf life indefinitely. Pairing them together required a tiny bit of effort, but that effort was part of the experience. You built your own little snacks one cracker at a time. It wasn't packaged in plastic with cartoon mascots. It was just food. And that was enough. Cold salads were lunchbox staples, packed in small plastic containers with tight lids. Pasta salad with rotini or bow tie noodles, cherry tomatoes, cubes of cheese, and a light Italian dressing. Or potato salad with chunks of real potato, bits of celery, hard-boiled egg, and mayonnaise that actually tasted like something. These were side dishes from family dinners, portioned out for the next day's lunch. They were made in home kitchens with ingredients from the grocery store by someone who knew your name. They weren't scientifically formulated for maximum shelf stability. They needed to be kept cool and eaten within a day. That limitation meant they were fresh. The flavors were simple but satisfying. You could identify every ingredient. Nothing was mysterious or unpronounceable. Today's pre-made salads come in sealed plastic cups with preservatives and stabilizers. They last for weeks, but they also taste like plastic and regret. Simple, portable, protein-packed. A hard-boiled egg, peeled that morning or left in its shell, tucked into the lunchbox alongside a tiny folded paper containing a pinch of salt. You'd crack it open at lunch, sprinkle the salt, and eat it in a few bites. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't exciting, but it was substantial and real. The egg came from a chicken, not from a processing plant that turned eggs into shelf-stable liquid or pre-cooked patties shaped like circles. Some kids loved them, some traded them away, but everyone recognized them as actual food. Today's lunch proteins are often processed beyond recognition. Chicken nuggets that barely contain chicken. Meat sticks that are more filler than meat. Cheese that's technically cheese product. The humble hard-boiled egg was honest. What you saw was what you got. Before baby carrots were invented and marketed as a convenience food, kids got regular carrots, peeled and cut into sticks. Same with celery. Washed, trimmed, cut into manageable pieces. They came in a small container or plastic bag, alongside another small container with ranch dressing for dipping. The vegetables were crunchy. They required actual chewing. They tasted like vegetables, not like whatever coating manufacturers spray on pre-packaged veggie snacks. And that ranch dressing? Often homemade or at least bought as a quality product, not the ultra-processed squeeze bottle variety that's more chemicals than dairy. Eating them was interactive. Dip, crunch, repeat. It made consuming vegetables feel less like a chore and more like part of the meal. Today's kids get veggie straws or veggie chips that are technically made from vegetables but have been processed into something barely recognizable. They're marketed as healthy, but they're really just another form of chips. Real vegetable sticks taught kids what vegetables actually taste like, and that education mattered. Yes, juice boxes still exist, but read the ingredients on most modern ones. Contains 10% real fruit juice. The rest? Water, high fructose corn syrup, artificial flavors, and food coloring. Old-school juice boxes were different. They contained mostly actual juice. Apple juice that tasted like apples. Orange juice that tasted like oranges. Grape juice that was deep purple and intensely flavored. Sure, they still had sugar. Fruit juice is naturally high in sugar, but it was the sugar that came from fruit, not from a corn processing plant. And the difference was noticeable. Real juice had depth. It had body. When you finished drinking it, your mouth didn't feel coated in artificial sweetness. The modern versions are cheaper to produce and last longer on shelves. But they teach kids that juice means sugar water with flavoring, not the liquid pressed from actual fruit. This might be the most important one. The best old-school lunches weren't special items made specifically for lunch. They were portions of last night's family dinner, carefully packed to be eaten the next day. A piece of meatloaf and some green beans. Spaghetti with meat sauce in a small container. A piece of baked chicken with a dinner roll. Beef stew ladled into a thermos. These meals weren't designed to be kid food. They were real food that the whole family ate together. Sending them in lunchboxes reinforced that connection. It meant kids ate the same quality of food at school that they ate at home. It meant the family dinner extended into the next day. It meant less waste and more value from cooking real meals. Today's lunch culture has created a separate category called kid food that's largely processed, packaged, and designed for convenience rather than nutrition. We've lost the idea that kids should eat what adults eat, just in smaller portions, and that loss has consequences. The processed food industry told parents they were making life easier. And in some ways, they were right. Pre-packaged lunches are faster. They don't require planning or early morning prep. But we gave up more than we realized. We gave up teaching kids what real food tastes like. We normalized the idea that food comes from packages, not from kitchens. We replaced nutrition with convenience and flavor with shelf stability. Old school lunches weren't perfect. They required time, effort, and planning. They sometimes got messy. They couldn't sit in lockers for weeks without spoiling. But those limitations were actually features. They meant the food was real, fresh, made by someone who cared. Maybe we can't go back completely. Modern life moves fast and convenience matters. But we can remember. We can make different choices. We can teach the next generation that food doesn't have to come from a factory to be acceptable. Because those old school lunches, they weren't just about feeding kids. They were about showing love, teaching values, and connecting home to the wider world. And that's something worth bringing back.